Some truths aren't just buried, they're swallowed by the earth, waiting in absolute darkness. A team of explorers, led by Bryce Johnson, thought their mission was simple: map an old mine with a $16,000 drone.
Bigfoot in there? Finally, we'll find the truth.
Oh my God.
I'm losing signal. That's not good. Uh-oh.
The plan was to fly down, scan the area, and fly back up. But deep beneath the surface, the machine captured more than just rock and dirt. It returned with evidence of something impossible, a secret that has been hiding from humanity for generations. The point of no return. The day began like any other for a team of dedicated researchers. The air was crisp, and the sun cast long shadows through the towering pines. The mission objective was straightforward: deploy a state-of-the-art drone into the vertical maw of an abandoned mine shaft. This wasn't just any hobbyist's toy. This was a $16,000 piece of industrial-grade equipment, a flying marvel called the Pathfinder X2, designed to withstand the toughest conditions. Its carbon fiber frame housed a sophisticated flight controller, and it communicated using a proprietary signal-hopping technology that could maintain a solid link for over 9 miles in open air. This machine was built to go where people couldn't and come back safely. Its powerful rotors whirred to life, a stark contrast to the profound silence of the surrounding wilderness. The drone, a beacon of modern exploration, hovered for a moment over the dark opening, its 4K camera relaying a crystal-clear image back to the operator screen. Then, with a gentle push of the controls, it began its descent, completely unaware of what was waiting for it at the bottom. 100 feet. The rock walls were a blur of brown and gray. 200 feet. The sunlight from the surface was now just a distant pinprick, a memory of the world above. The drone's powerful twin LED lights, capable of putting out 4,000 lumens, cut through the oppressive darkness, revealing a perfectly ordinary, empty shaft. So far, so good. The telemetry data streamed back to the laptop, showing everything was perfect. Battery voltage was stable, motor temperatures were cool, and the signal strength was at 100%. The air down here was still and cold, a pocket of forgotten time. It's funny when you think about it, how quickly a routine situation can spiral into the unknown. At just over 300 feet, the unthinkable happened. The video feed, which had been flawless, suddenly pixelated into a green and purple mess before vanishing completely. A cascade of error messages flooded the screen. Disconnected, signal lost, telemetry, link severed. The drone's lights, once a steady and reassuring white, blinked an angry, ominous red on the last frame before the feed died. The pilot, a seasoned expert with countless hours of flight time, felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This wasn't normal. A simple signal loss feels different. The signal strength meter would dip, the video would get choppy. This was an abrupt, total disconnection. It was as if someone had flipped a switch, severing the link instantly. A drone like the Pathfinder X2, with its advanced fail-safes and redundant systems, doesn't just fall silent. Its return-to-home function is programmed to activate automatically if the signal is lost for more than 3 seconds. The drone should have stopped, ascended to a safe altitude, and flown right back to its launch point. But the team's drone wasn't moving. The GPS tracker showed its last known position was frozen, 300 feet down. It was just hanging there, a silent sentinel in the deep. Panic began to set in. The team ran through the possibilities. Could it be a pocket of dense magnetic rock? That was the first logical guess. Some old mines are loaded with iron ore, which can create magnetic fields. But here's the thing. Those fields might mess with a simple compass, but the Pathfinder's guidance system uses a mix of GPS, inertial sensors, and visual positioning. More importantly, its multi-frequency radio link was designed to cut right through that kind of interference. To completely jam it would require an electromagnetic pulse of incredible power, something far beyond simple iron ore. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. The silence from the speakers was deafening, a void where the whir of rotors should have been. Their expensive eye in the sky was now blind and alone, and the team was about to discover that the reason why was far more shocking than a simple malfunction. Their most advanced piece of tech was helpless, and a terrifying thought began to form. A map and a hunch. Scrambling for a solution, the team pulled out their topographical maps, spreading them across the hood of their truck. The old paper crackled, a relic from a different era of exploration. On it, they pinpointed their current location and the last known coordinates of the disabled drone. Then, one member spotted something interesting. Just a quarter-mile away, nestled in another part of the hillside, was the mark for a second mine entrance. It wasn't a vertical shaft like the first one, but a horizontal adit, a tunnel boring straight into the earth. It's wild how a simple piece of paper can change everything. A new idea sparked to life. What if these two mines were connected? It was a long shot, but it made a certain kind of sense. Back in the late 1800s, when this mine was supposedly carved out in a short-lived silver rush, miners would often dig complex networks. A vertical shaft was great for hauling ore out, but horizontal adits were crucial for drainage and ventilation. A whole labyrinth could exist under their feet. If a tunnel did indeed connect the two shafts, then maybe, just maybe, they could get a signal through from a different angle. The theory was that by entering the second mine, a rescue drone might get close enough to the first one to establish a new link, or, at the very least, get a visual on what happened. It was a desperate plan, born of a desperate situation, but it was the only one they had. The potential financial loss of the drone was one thing, but the burning question of what caused the failure was far more compelling. Packing up their gear, the team made the trek to the second location. The forest here seemed different, quieter, denser. An unusual lack of birdsong hung in the air. This new entrance was less imposing than the gaping vertical hole, a dark, horizontal opening at the base of a rock face, partially obscured by overgrown bushes. A wave of cool, musty air flowed out, carrying the scent of damp earth and something else. Something organic and unfamiliar. A wild, musky odor that didn't belong to any animal they knew. This felt more like a lair than a mine. As they got closer, they spotted enormous, five-toed footprints sunk deep into the mud near the entrance. Too wide, too heavy to belong to any bear or man. A sense of unease settled over the crew. They set up their equipment once more, the pilot's hands steady, but his expression tense. The rescue drone, a second Pathfinder X2, was prepped for flight. This time, the mission was not just exploration. It was a recovery operation in what was starting to feel like hostile territory. With a deep breath, the pilot sent the second drone into the horizontal tunnel. The darkness swallowed it instantly. The first few hundred feet were just a straight, man-made corridor with old rotting timbers lining the walls. But then, the tunnel began to twist and turn, opening into natural-looking caverns that the old maps had never shown. This was more than a mine. It was a complex network of passages, part man-made, part natural cave system. The team watched the monitor, their hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and dread. Every corner they turned, they expected to see the wreckage of their first drone. Instead, they found something else entirely. The floor of the cavern wasn't barren rock. It was covered in strange green foliage, plants that shouldn't be growing this deep, completely deprived of sunlight. This was impossible, unless, of course, there was another source of energy down here, something that defied the known laws of biology. The rescue mission had just turned into a mind-bending scientific investigation. Signs of a predator. Photosynthesis, the process that gives plants their green color, is powered by sunlight. Finding thriving green life in a place where the sun has never shone is a scientific impossibility. It would be like finding a fish that could breathe fire. This immediately raised 1,000 questions. Was it some kind of bioluminescent fungus providing the light? Unlikely on this scale. The more mind-blowing possibility was chemosynthesis, a process where organisms get energy from chemical reactions instead of light. We see this in the deepest parts of the ocean, where bizarre ecosystems thrive around hydrothermal vents, spewing sulfurous compounds from the Earth's core. To find a similar ecosystem here, in a terrestrial mine, would be a discovery worthy of a Nobel Prize. It meant there was a unique chemical energy source somewhere in this cave system. But as the drone ventured deeper, the strange foliage gave way to an even more shocking sight. The floor of a large cavern was covered in what looked like a massive nest. It wasn't made of twigs and leaves like a bird's nest. Instead, it was a huge, haphazard pile of shredded vegetation, moss, and something else that made the team lean closer to the monitor. Fur. Large clumps of animal fur were woven into the nesting material, and spread all across the cavern floor, almost like a carpet, were more tufts of hair. The drone's 4K camera zoomed in, revealing strands of coarse, thick fur, some a stark white, others a deep reddish brown. This was not the den of a bear or a mountain lion. The scale was all wrong. The nest was enormous, easily 10 feet across and several feet thick, big enough to cradle a creature of immense size. It was a shocking piece of evidence of something very, very large living down here. A chill ran down the spine of every person watching the screen. This wasn't just a mine, it was a home. They were intruders in a creature's private sanctuary. The sense of being watched intensified, even though they were miles away, looking at a screen. Suddenly, just as they were processing the incredible find, the second drone began to malfunction. But this time was different. It wasn't an instant cutoff. First, the video feed began to distort, warping at the edges as if viewed through a heat haze. A low humming sound bled through the audio channel. Then, the controls became sluggish and unresponsive. It was happening again. The same interference that had disabled the first drone was now affecting the second, but it felt more controlled, more deliberate. It was as if the inhabitant of this nest was toying with them, or perhaps focusing its strange energy. The pilot struggled to keep the drone airborne, the whirring of its motors sounding strained and distant through the intermittent audio feed. With a surge of adrenaline, the pilot slammed the controls into reverse, trying to wrestle the drone back towards the entrance. The flight out was a nightmare. The video feed flashed with static, and for a split second, a huge, dark shape seemed to move in the background of the cavern before the picture cut out, then returned. The pilot fought for control as the mysterious force seemed to resist the drone's retreat. But he did it. The drone emerged from the dark tunnel and landed unsteadily on the ground. The team rushed over, not just to secure their equipment, but because they saw something incredible. Tangled in the rotors, snagged by the spinning blades during the chaotic flight, were several strands of the very same fur they had seen on the cavern floor. They had physical evidence. The team carefully collected the samples, placing them in sterile bags. The white and reddish-brown hairs were thick and coarse to the touch. This was not a hoax. This was real. They had captured a piece of the mystery, and it was more terrifying than they imagined. The walker in the woods. With the precious fur sample secured, the team's minds were racing. The nest, the drone interference, the impossible biology, it all pointed to something extraordinary. But the most stunning piece of evidence was yet to be discovered. As part of their standard procedure, the researchers had set up several motion-activated trail cameras in the woods surrounding the mine entrances. It's a funny thing about these cameras. You set them up hoping to catch a deer, but sometimes you catch a nightmare. These weren't cheap cameras. They were high-definition units with passive infrared sensors, triggered by a combination of heat and motion. In the excitement of the drone mission, the cameras had been all but forgotten. Now, as one of the team members began reviewing the footage on a laptop, everyone fell silent. He scrolled through hours of uneventful clips, A squirrel scampering up a tree, leaves rustling in the wind, the sun setting in a time lapse of orange and purple. Then he stopped. "You guys need to see this," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He replayed a short 10-second clip. The footage was grainy, shot from a distance, but it was unmistakable. A massive, bipedal figure walked with a fluid, powerful stride from one cluster of trees to another. It was covered in dark hair, and its arms, long and muscular, swung with a distinctly non-human gait. Its shoulders were incredibly broad, and its head sat low, seeming to connect directly to its powerful torso. It was tall, towering over the surrounding brush, easily clearing 7, maybe even 8 feet in height. For a brief moment, it turned its head, and even from a distance, the team could feel a sense of intelligence, of awareness, before it disappeared completely into the dense forest. The team watched the clip again, and again, and again. They were speechless. They began a preliminary analysis right there in the field. The gait was the most shocking part. It wasn't the clumsy shuffle of a person in a suit. It was a smooth, compliant gait, where the knee bent with each step, just like in the famous 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film. This was a hallmark of a real, biological creature. Based on its height and massive build, they estimated its weight had to be over 600 pounds. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with a terrifying snap. The powerful interference disabled the drones. The enormous nest built for a giant creature. The strange VIR samples. It was all connected. The creature in the video was the inhabitant of the mine. This was no longer a scientific mystery. It was the discovery of a lifetime. It's one thing to find a nest or a strange hair sample. A skeptic could explain that away. But this was different. This was video footage of a living, breathing Sasquatch. The team realized the creature must have been aware of their presence the entire time. It had watched them. The feeling of being watched they had felt earlier was not paranoia. It was a fact. The creature was likely still out there, somewhere in the vast wilderness, observing them from the shadows. The evidence was overwhelming, almost too much to process. They had set out to explore a hole in the ground and had stumbled upon the mind-blowing truth behind North America's greatest legend. The truth was no longer just in the mine. It was on the screen, staring back at them. An impossible strand of DNA. The long drive back from the mine was silent. How do you process something that turns your entire understanding of the world upside down? The team had a flash drive with a video footage, a baggie with physical fur samples, and a story that no one would ever believe. The first thing they did upon returning to their makeshift lab was place a single strand of the reddish-brown fur under a digital microscope. What they saw on the screen sent another shockwave through the room. The hair wasn't structured like anything from a known North American mammal. It had a unique, unseriated medulla pattern, meaning its core was unlike a bear's, a deer's, or even a human's. It was something entirely new, a biological signature for a species that science insisted did not exist. And get this, the preliminary DNA sequencing results that came back a week later were even more baffling. The mitochondrial DNA was primate, for sure, but it didn't match any known primate on Earth. It was in a league of its own, a new branch on the hominid family tree. The implications were staggering. This wasn't some missing link from the ancient past. It was a living, breathing relative of humanity, hiding in the dark places of the world. This creature, this Sasquatch, was a species of giant, nocturnal, and highly elusive primate that had somehow survived alongside humanity for thousands of years, completely evading formal discovery. The question now was, what do you do with this kind of proof? Do you go to the press and spark a global media frenzy? A circus of hunters, tourists, and thrill-seekers would descend on that quiet patch of wilderness, destroying the creature's habitat and threatening its very existence. The team felt a heavy weight of responsibility. They had stumbled upon this secret, but did they have the right to expose it? Looking back at the events, the creature's actions seemed clearer now. It never showed aggression. It didn't attack the drones. It simply disabled them. It was a warning. It was a clear, intelligent message. Stay away. Leave me in peace. This wasn't a mindless beast. It was an intelligent being protecting its home. The team found themselves at a crossroads. They held the key to solving the world's greatest mystery, but revealing the truth could lead to the creature's demise. The discovery of a lifetime had become a profound moral dilemma. They had been so focused on the chase, on proving the legend was real. But now they had to confront the consequences of their success. The world might not be ready for this truth, and perhaps some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, some creatures left to their solitude. They had the proof, but the biggest question of all was not what it was, but what they should do with it. The evidence is here, but the real question remains. If a creature this intelligent wants to be left alone, do people have the right to expose it? Like and subscribe for more.